Hello and welcome to the latest i3 session. Thank you for joining. You're definitely in the right place. We got an insightful webinar focused on leveraging data in IVF laboratories to enhance efficiency and success rates. We'll explore the integrations of AI into the workplace, advanced ways of managing frozen gametes and embryos, and strategies to harmonize these elements for optimal lab performance and improved IVF outcomes. I'm actually joined by two co-hosts tonight. The first, Dr. Amber Cooper. She's a double board certified in obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology and infertility. She's the Chief Medical Officer of Genomics and Laboratory Science with KindBody, where she also serves as a medical and IVF practice director in the St. Louis region. She's been actively involved in the American Society for Reproductive Medicines and has served on the board of directors of the Society of Reproductive Endocrinology and Infertility in the US. She's also the president of the Midwest Reproductive Symposium International, and you can see her full bio on the i3 website, ivfmeeting.com.
Thank you for that amazing introduction, and I'm absolutely honored to be here with this global community and watching all those amazing names pop up from all around the world. To reciprocate, let's talk a little about Andrew's achievements. He is a highly experienced multi-site IVF lab director and HFEA person responsible at Avenues Center for Reproductive Health, the first clinic in the world to use a full end-to-end AI-driven digital infrastructure that captures the most comprehensive fertility journey data set. He has also adopted a quality management heavy evidence-based approach to ART and is passionate about patient access to care, which I love. He's presented his research both nationally and internationally on multiple occasions and is frequently invited speaker on a wide variety of topics across the IVF and AI spectrum. We are also joined today by our other lovely co-host, Radhika Kakulavarapu. And I know I probably continue to say that wrong every time I said it. You know how many times I said
fine.
Following the completion of her education at Monash University, she experienced the vast and varying roles of being a clinical embryologist from Japan to the Philippines to currently Norway, where she's working now. She's also pursuing her PhD at Oslo Metropolitan University, researching cell exclusions, morphological assessments, and the utility of explainable AI within reproductive science.
Thank you so much. That was lovely. Thanks so much. But let's get right into it with our first speaker. He's a very distinguished medic, scientist, and innovator. I'm sure you've all heard his name, Alejandro Chavez Badiola, who has recently also completed a PhD with the theme AI in assisted reproduction, in addition to being a trained and accomplished gynecologist. He trained in reproductive medicine at the Hewitt Center for Reproductive Medicine, Liverpool Women's Hospital, and entered in the British General Medical Council Registry in 2005. In 2007, he was appointed as professor and research coordinator for the Clinical Sciences Division in Health Sciences at Universidad de Guadalajara in Mexico, and became founder and chief medical officer at the New Hope Fertility Mexico since 2009. More recently, however, he is co-founder of IVF 2.0 UK Limited, a biotech company, and our kind sponsors for this talk, who are committed to the advancement of reproductive medicine. We are so excited to have you, Alejandro. So the screen is yours.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for the kind invitation. And I'll start this session by talking about AI consequences. So the first way in which I would like to approach this conversation, think about many things that once that we learn, we cannot unlearn. The day that you learn that Santa doesn't exist, too sad, but it's a cruel world. You cannot unlearn it. Or that babies don't come from Paris. You cannot unlearn that. So I think it's the same when we learn something new in life, at school, about technology. And the question is, how do we react to this? How do we transform this into something useful in our lives? So talking about IVF, the things that we know. The chart that I'm showing you here are the results from SART United States from 2020. And as you know, and you will see, unfortunately, not all labs have the same results around the world. What I'm showing you here are results from 3 clinics, all in New York. One clinic, if a patient with good prognosis walks through the doors, would be offered a chance of a live birth of under 25%. This clinic in 2020 in New York City was offering results that were the average in the United States in the early 90s. You walk literally 5 minutes and you walk through the door of a second clinic that would be offering 38% chances of success rates in patients under 35. You cross the street, again, literally, you just cross the street, and you have a clinic that is offering results from the future. It's way above the national average, and patients walking into this clinic would be offered over 50% chances of a live birth with 1 cycle. What's the difference? IVF is a numbers game. I actually think that life is a numbers game. And I'll tell you a bit about myself and how I enter into the picture of AI and automation. I opened my first clinic in Mexico in 2008, 2009, and 5 years later, I decided that it was time to open a second clinic. I went to Mexico City, opened a second clinic, and I thought that I was going to be able to open a clinic every other year. But then I faced reality. It was impossible to clone myself. It was very, very difficult to build a team of skilled doctors, and even more difficult and challenging, building a team of scientists, of embryologists, with good skills that will allow me to offer standardized results for my patients in the lab. So out of frustration, I started exploring different areas of knowledge outside of medicine. And one day I came up with a book that was talking about Bayesian statistics and was slightly introducing the idea of artificial intelligence. That was one of the moments in my life when I learned something that I could not unlearn. I just didn't know how to apply it. A few weeks later, I was having a meeting with doctors and embryologists about a case, one of these cases that were supposed to be successful. Young patient, good ovarian reserve, good number of eggs, but unfortunately didn't get pregnant first cycle. She didn't get pregnant second cycle. So again, I called for this meeting and I asked the doctors, everything was fine. Embryologists, how were the eggs? Eggs were beautiful. How were the embryos? Embryos were beautiful. Guys, come on. You have to be more objective than that. We're talking about a patient that didn't get pregnant. You cannot tell me that the embryos were beautiful. And they started talking about the Gardner score, and this was a 5AA, and this was a 5BA. Guys, come on. You have to be more objective than this. So out of frustration, I started asking my head of embryologists to count every single cell in the embryos on a video. After 1 week, he knocked on my door. Alejandro, this is crazy. Okay, but we could count cells, right? So that's good news. How about we take a picture of this embryo, divide it in 8, count the cells in 1/8 of the embryo, and then we come up with an index. Before the month, he was knocking back on my door. Alejandro, this is impossible. You're going to drive us crazy. What we need is better mathematics. Okay. So then I started making the association between better mathematics, the need for being more objective on how we're assessing embryos, and this book that I read about artificial intelligence. And so I went to a professor in mathematics from the university, and I was telling him about our problem. And he told me, Alejandro, are you doing this with pictures? Yeah, and I was very enthusiastic, but I can show you videos. I have videos. No, Alejandro, you don't understand. Pictures are pixels. I don't know which face I pull. Alejandro, you know what a pixel is? No. Pixel stands for picture element. Pictures are pixels, and pixels are numbers, and I can do whatever you want with numbers. So to put this in perspective, the way in which computers perceive the world when we present images is by transforming these pixels into numbers. If it's black and white, then there's a number from 0 to 1 that is assigned according to the grade of gray. If it's in colors, then it would assign 3 different numbers for red, green, and blue, potentially a 4th one for translucency. And based on these numbers, the computers will start identifying patterns that could mean nothing and just link it to an outcome, or could be trained so it can start becoming something like identifying to ectoderm, inner cell mass, blastocele. Now, why is this important? If we think about the IVF lab, the most sophisticated IVF lab that you can think about today is very, very similar to an IVF lab from 40 years ago, maybe even from close to 50 years ago. We're using the same microscopes, probably slightly better optics. The only things that have changed are quality controls. We introduced the ICSI, but again, the basics are exactly the same. And the consequence is that the process today is still artisanal, subjective, prone to error, and very difficult to scale. Now, we know that we as humans are very good at inventing tools to improve ourselves. For example, when I cook, I know that I don't have natural ways to evaluate the weight and assess how many milligrams or what is a spoon size or a cup. When I want to cook well and I'm following a recipe, I don't estimate the temperature of the oven. When I'm driving, I don't estimate, I don't guess how much petrol I have. When I'm flying, I don't guess the altitude. The same way in which right now I'm wearing glasses. I don't guess what I have in front of me, because we as humans, again, are very good at developing tools to improve ourselves. So the thing we know is that we were not naturally born with ways to measure, to quantify the world around us. So what do we do? Let's take a couple of examples. Sperm identification. We know how a normal sperm should look like, but we don't have rulers in our eyes to measure the sperm while it's moving. We know what defines a good mortal sperm, but we don't have a way to assess speed in real time with our eyes. Now, there are tools that can do this. Computers can do this. Computer vision and artificial intelligence can do this. So yes, there are tools that allow us to quantify what we have in front of us in the IVF lab to assist us, as any tool, to assist us in making informed decisions. So the computers are not making decisions for us. The same way that my glasses are not looking for me. They're just an assistant. Now, results are better. Another example, we know, and this is a very nice paper wrote by Charles Borman, that embryologists are highly inconsistent when evaluating embryos. And we know that computers are highly consistent. Why? Because computer can extract many more features than we as humans can. So the computer can actually extract more information faster than we do, compute operations faster than we do, and then give us very objective recommendations. And this is not just one paper. There are several papers nowadays suggesting how much better AIs can be in performing certain tasks when compared with embryologists. And I know you might say, well, probably for a junior embryologist, but it's not the case for me, because the experience that I have could outperform any AI. So the question I would be asking embryologists, same as I would be asking doctors. Imagine you are the best doctor, imagine you're the best embryologist in the world, no question. But I'm going to ask you, are you the best version of yourself every day throughout the day? Or am I going to be the unlucky patient that walked through the door the day that you were not at your best? Am I going to be the patient that is going to walk through your door just after you received that disturbing phone call? So we know there are AIs that can assist us in identifying things that we were just not trained to do. For example, linking morphology or morphological characteristics with ploidy, or even the chances that an embryo has to end up in a miscarriage. So going back to the things that you know, the first question that you might be asking yourself when you see these first two words, you and AI, is how do you put these together? And the reason why I was saying that things you know how to use some AIs. You don't turn on the Waze or whichever assistant you use to drive, and then you on purpose decide to beat the AI. It's like, no, I'm 100% sure that is wrong. So I'm going to take a different route and I'm going to get home faster than the AI is suggesting. You just don't do that, right? You just cooperate with the AI. You put feedback. You let the computer know if you want to avoid motorways, if you want to avoid paid routes, if you want to take a different route that you like most, if you want to stop between getting to your final destination. You don't work against the AI. You work along the AI. This is, you are using a tool to improve the outcome, the desired outcome. Why don't we use the same approach when we think about the AIs available to us in helping making decisions in AI? Because this is not whether, for example, Erica or any other AI for embryo selection is going to be better than your IVF team, better than PGT, metabolomics, or time-lapse. The question is, how are these AIs going to become a tool that will make whatever you have even better? We did a study where we were asking embryologists to select embryos, which ones you thought that were the best, the worst, and at the end you would get a ranking, your ranking. And then you would ask the computer to perform a ranking. And then you could choose the one embryo that you would transfer. And you could completely ignore the computer, you could blindly follow the computer's recommendation, or you could reassess this recommendation using the second opinion of the AI. The result, and I would like you to focus on what is underlined, is that the AI and humans were outperformed by the combination of decision-making when a human was using the AI. The AI outperformed the human, but we already knew that. So how bad was this, or how good was this? If we use as an example the user 7, who was the best performing embryologist in this group, He did not outperform the AI, but he clearly improved his decision-making processes when letting himself or herself be assisted by the AI. So again, how did this best performing embryologist do against user 6, who was the worst performing embryologist, when user 6 was assisted by AI? The worst performing embryologist outperformed the best performing embryologist without the assistance of AI. And if you go to user 1, who was the most junior embryologist in this group, he also outperformed the best performing embryologist when he was assisted by an AI. Now, is there value in here? If you think about how much would it cost a patient in this example before an embryologist identifies a euploid embryo, it would cost the patient over 7,000 US dollars for the worst performing embryologist until they find a euploid embryo, against 6,000 from the best performing, or way under 6,000 when the worst performing embryologist or the most junior embryologist were assisted through AI. So now you know, AIs are tools that can assist you to quantify things that we as humans just can't. Again, you don't drive just guessing how much petrol you have. You don't fly guessing how high you are flying. And if you want to be consistent and you want to prepare the spaghetti or the cake or the most sophisticated dish in a fantastic way every day, nail it every time you prepare it, you must follow standards. You must use tools that allow you to replicate what you're doing right. So what is another consequence of AI? We're going to see more and more technology coming and being incorporated into the IVF lab. So for example, AIs depend on screens. Well, we can see augmented reality, virtual reality coming into our labs soon, just to improve the way in which we're interacting with these AIs. This is one example. This is our AI assistant for sperm selection seen through augmented reality. So you see through the scope. You don't need to look at the screen. What else is going to happen? If you think, and the video that you have in front of you is a fully automated ICSI from sperm identification, immobilization, loading it into the needle, and then identifying the egg, piercing through the wall, and injecting the sperm into the cell. Why is this possible? Because the AI is working as the brains that is powering robots. Of course, as a tool with an assisting an embryologist. For example, if I am going to get prostate surgery and I have the best surgeon 60 years old, 50 years old, or I have a highly skilled surgeon who is using the Da Vinci robot, statistics are very clear. Fewer complications with the robot. Who is operating? The surgeon, not the robot. The robot is a fantastic tool that is assisting a good surgeon being better. So now you know. And that was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alejandro. That was amazing. And I think there's a lot of amazing questions coming in. I would like to start, we have a lot more for the Q&A later, but I'd like to start with one key question. You used a couple different terms, it's AI assisting you versus is AI replacing something, right? And if you had to say what you feel right now, as the reproductive endocrinologist, and many questions are coming in from the embryologist as well, is How do you see the role of the REI and the role of the embryologist in 5 years, in 10 years? Are there aspects that are replaced and aspects that are assisted?
So I'll start with embryologists. I like using GPT and Claude and these generative these LLMs a lot. And what I've learned is that I'm becoming better and better at using them. I have horrible grammar, both in English and in Spanish. Okay, I would not dare send an email or a document without going through a computer revised grammar check. Now, English is, as you can tell, is not my tongue language. I mean, it's terrible. My written English is horrible. When I was doing my training in the UK and I had to dictate letters for referring doctors about the patient that I saw, I mean, it was horrible. Every time that I read them, it was fantastic. Why? Because my secretary, who was a native English speaker, was improving my English. So now I don't have the secretary, but I have these AIs that are improving my language. Why would you send anyone an email, a formal email, not a casual one, if it's not improved? You have the tool. So for embryologists, I think that all these repetitive tasks that most of times embryologists don't even like preparing dishes, preparing sperm, that are so boring. I mean, it's just having an embryologist with a master's degree, sometimes with a PhD, sent back to the lab pretending or wanting him to work as a robot, just doing the same repetitive things. What we should be doing is empowering them, removing those repetitive tasks and allowing them to become scientists once again. And for us as doctors, I think that a lot of the basic things like making a diagnosis of whether a patient is a candidate for IVF or ICSI is very straightforward. I think that we can make that call within 5 minutes. Of course, we cannot do it because patients want this report. But what if an AI is already assisting us in this process? We just check, we confirm, we make sure that we're not missing anything, and then we dedicate all that time for the valuable part of the medical doctor-patient relationship that is taking care of them. So I don't know if this is answering your question, but I think that AIs are going to allow us as tools to let us do more of what we like doing, what we enjoy doing, and what is adding most value to the outcome of patients.
It's like still allowing us to practice the art of what we do and at the top of our degree, and the embryologist too, right?
Spot on. I think that AI could potentially help us practice at the top of our medical licenses. That goes for nurses practicing IVF, embryologists, OBGYNs, and reproductive endocrinologists.
Perfect. Well, thank you. More to come later on. Thank you so much. All right, moving on to our next amazing speaker. It is an honor to introduce John Whitney. So John graduated, there he is. John graduated from California Polytechnic University, where he studied animal science and applied biotechnology. A skilled program and product developer with more than a decade of hands-on IVF lab experience, John has spent his career expanding his expertise in the science and management of all aspects of fertility care. Having held leadership roles in both IVF and genetics laboratories, as well as in egg donation and cryopreservation services, he began his career in fertility care as an embryologist, spending more than a decade working in the IVF laboratory. He has successfully managed multiple business units, ranging from cryostorage all the way to surrogacy. John now works for Cooper Surgical as the global head of cryo and digital services. This talk is also kindly sponsored by Cooper Surgical. John, welcome. It's an honor to have you and looking forward to your amazing talk.
Thank you so much. It's always nice to say welcome to everybody, but on Zoom calls, you don't get the reply back. So I'll kindly say hello to everyone. Our talk today is specifically identifying how do you use data to facilitate compliance in cryo storage. My name is John Whitney, as you so graciously introduced me. I am the global head of cryo and digital, which includes embryo options, which will be much of what our talk is today. But before we go into it, I think I want to call out the ambiguous term of compliance and try to define what is compliance. So when we think of it, we think that compliance refers to adhering or conforming to any laws, standards, regulations, or policies. And that's how you conform, is by being compliant. But we want to identify that policies and procedures in the IVF lab many times are self-written. They are our policies, what we feel is best and what is best practice. And then outside of that, as we're going to learn, there are legislation and regulations in many markets throughout the world and many countries that dictate what you can and can't do within the cryo space. For full disclosure, I do work for Cooper Surgical, as well as we are the sponsor here, specifically for the cryo and digital services, in which today we're going to be discussing embryo options as one of the digital services that we have. So what is my talk going to cover? Let's go through an agenda so I can keep everybody's interest all the way to the very end. So we're going to start with looking at the landscape. We're going to understand embryo and gamete management. We're going to look at what do patients consider when thinking about end of storage? What's going through their head? What does the literature say for that reason? And then what do patients need to support their end of storage decisions? What do we need to do to support them throughout their decision-making process? What are our own internal policies and procedures that we need to be compliant for? Then we're going to talk and move into what embryo options does, and we're going to talk about what locating, contacting, and educating patients with embryo and gamete storage actually can look like. What does the power of using the data and using automation and centralizing that actually give you? How do we support simplified payments and simplified ways to communicate and to facilitate end of storage for the long term for the patients that are there? And then we're going to give you what we've been working on and how do we support local regulatory requirements, in this case, specifically the HFEA, and some of the guidelines that are ever changing out there, and how does automation and an actual digital platform give you the ability to improve patients' experience as well as improve your compliance and what you need to do. So when we're looking at embryo and gamete management, I think everybody knows that the use of, from my term, coming from slow freezing into vitrification and then into egg freezing, and now with freeze-all cycles, that there's just been an increase in cryopreservation in our industry totally. Goes without saying, I think everybody knows that. There also has been a global increase in IVF in infertility and IVF cycles. We're getting new treatments. Again, speaking to the freeze-alls, social freezing are also transforming the industry. And today we're faced with this increased challenge from patients and peers to maintain our compliance and our need to our patients. If you think about cryo as the history of your lab, you now many times have patients 4, 5, 8 years that are in cryo storage that you're looking to maintain a great relationship with and engage with them. And in turn, your cryo billing, cryo management presents several challenges for the clinics that many times are labor intensive and time consuming. You have discrepancies of payment, discrepancies of paperwork. Patients need emotional support. You need operational and regulatory needs to meet the complexities of what you're faced with. We're going to go in specifically into what the HFEA requires, as well as we know that in Australia and in many markets, there are needs to meet the regulatory needs. And we can show that we know that they're coming, that regulations are coming to support cryo storage and cryo management. And as a lab, we need to have our policies and procedures and a framework in place to meet the changes that are coming at us and to be able to provide best in class for our patients while also meeting what our inspectors and what the regulations mean for us. So in general, this is not a new problem, but it is a growing concern for us to take a charge of our cryo management the way that we need, knowing that freezing has only been increasing. So when we want to go ahead and think about it, and when we did our research, we know that there are challenges, and we've seen that 51% of clinics rank that time-consuming paperwork as their biggest challenge. Much of this is done in Excel spreadsheets or on different type of written documents, or some in their EMR, some on Google Sheets, some on this other documentation. All of those just take up valuable lab time to be able to meet the needs of cryo management. We also know that many clinics perceive that account aging as a key challenge. Looking back in time and saying that we have a substantial amount of patients over 5 years of storage, and those numbers grow every year, we keep adding to the older age storage. How do we manage aging accounts and make sure that we're touching them and reaching them the same way that we are today with our new patients? We also know that there are challenges in embryo management that may result when there's no clear written instructions. What do we do when patients call up and say what they want done? What happens if they change their mind and we don't have things written? How easy is it for patients to get us their intentions? How easy is it for patients to communicate with us? And then outside of that, when we talk about compliance, as we said in the beginning, setting our own policies and procedures, determining written criteria that's associated with local regulations, as well as our own individual needs, to make sure that we have the policies and procedures that are our own, as well as the regulatory policies and procedures, met in a way that is auditable, traceable, and documented for us. Now, what does the literature say? So in combing the literature, we wanted to see first, what do patients consider when thinking about end of storage? Through that lens of compliance, what do the patients feel is compliant? And we know that patients, what they're concerned about is the quantity and quality of embryos. What do I have in storage? How long can I keep them? Also, information about the clinic or the clinical information about the success or the outcomes of those frozen embryos or gametes. They could have indecisions or disagreements on what they want to do with their end of storage options, what are available for them. And as couples navigate this together, can they come to an agreement? Do they have the support that is needed for that? And then fundamentally engagement. So that's really where we want to identify is engagement. Are we reaching our patients appropriately? And that's what they're looking for as well. I say that the millennial patient is the patient that we're working with, and they're accustomed to a level of engagement that is digital and easy, and we want to make sure that we provide that for them. Taking the same lens and looking at what a patient needs, what does the literature say that we need to do? What do we as the clinic or as the provider need to do to support some of these needs from patients? And how do we support end of storage decisions? And how do we avoid those unclaimed or those patients that are no longer communicating with us? And that all starts with engagement or contact. That's what the literature says. Look at your timing, looking at the format. How do you actually contact your patients? And then the literature is telling us that we need to look into education. Do we have access to support, easy access to subject matter experts, yourself in the lab, for patients to get some of these questions answered? Is there an awareness? Are you communicating with them, again, with that timing and in that format, to provide awareness for them so that they know what they have at their fingertips or what they need to do in order to identify some of their end of storage decisions? That goes right into the information and the knowledge. What information and what type of education is provided to them to inevitably support what they need, either to continue storage, utilize, or any of their end of storage needs. They need simple payment methods, a simple way to contact, something that is within their standard lingo of how they can communicate. And they need to understand all of their options to do that. So I'm hopefully painting the picture that we know that there are expectations and needs out of our patients that we also need to meet. And we need to look at ourselves to say, are we meeting our patients' needs in order to communicate with them and to manage those many years of growing storage? And now I'm going to move into, well, how do we do that? How do we use our data? How do we ensure our compliance with following our own ways of communicating with patients, our compliance of following the regulatory, and how do we experience that ripple effect, we call it, of true connectivity? How do we start something today that affects a patient many years ago? Most of the time in IVF, when we look at new procedures or new policies, we're improving outcomes for the patients of today. But the patients of today are also our cryo patients. Those patients still exist with us. We're still providing treatment for them every day in the form of maintaining their tanks and keeping their embryos and gametes safe to be used in the future. So how do we go back and touch those patients and make sure that they now have exceptional care, just like the new patients do today? And then how do we get that ripple effect of connectivity internally? How do we make sure that our billing teams, our nursing teams, our lab teams, our front office teams, even our physicians, how does everybody see this interconnectivity? How do they go to a central source to be able to identify what a patient needs or what their concerns are? Or how do we engage with them and properly communicate? And to do that, that's where we can utilize this digital approach and this automation to really give a great effect on all of our patients as well as us internally. And we do that through empowering your patient's journey by taking the data from your clinic and bring it into the platform. And what we do is that we've created a platform that is designed to help every patient stay updated and empowered to take control of their journey. They can look into further treatment. They can look into maintaining their account and paying. They can have donation to another couple if it's allowed in your country or in your market. They can donate to science if it's available or if you have any availability for that. They can look into other end of storage options as well. They can communicate, they can have education that you want to put in. You can outline what you want your patients to see through using the Embryo Options portal to do that. I really like what Crystal, one of our Australian embryologists, said, and I'm going to read it here, that she says that I think any sort of education that we can offer to patients is a huge benefit. It allows them to make really important decisions about their fertility journey and their family goals. Anything that allows them to be better informed and gives them more education can be nothing but a benefit to patients. And I think that using the data and using technology and automation and providing an online platform for your patients to engage with you truly goes to what Crystal is saying here. And we can't thank her enough to say, yeah, this is what we want to do. We want to provide best in class for our patients. So how does it benefit? What have we seen the benefits? Does this level of automation and digital engagement really benefit? Well, we can help you, number one, by reducing time-consuming admin tasks and improve the communication with your clients. With the platform, you can put in the way that you want your patients to be engaged, the language that you want, the emails that they're notified, the mailing that is given to them. You can dictate the tone and how you want to educate your patients. But we've also seen that that relieves a lot of the work from you. It can make your life a lot easier. You don't have to worry about that. Changing it tomorrow is very simple. Provide us with the documentation that you want to change. We can update all of the language and it can touch all of your patients instantly. And we can see that by streamlining and automating the cryobilling process and encouraging patients to engage and communicate within the online platform, this does increase the rate that patients engage. And you can see that by a 24% increase in patients paying. So we're more focused on that's 24% of patients that you're touching, that they're increasing their ability to communicate and tell you what they want to do. And then conversely, we want to see how does that affect those patients that maybe are concerned, maybe they're looking for end of storage options, or they could potentially be unclaimed. And we see that as a 14% reduction in those specific accounts. We've seen that the account receivable, the number of accounts that remain in that unengaged stance, that they reduce. When you layer in automation, they reduce. We have a paper, a poster presentation, sorry, at ESHRA this year that anybody can go to and see exactly what we're looking at, and looking at the power of automation and improving those patients that could become unclaimed or not communicate into communicating with you. And we feel that the results from utilizing embryo options paint a clear picture that utilizing automation and reaching your patients using your digital footprint improves not only their experience, but also yours as well. We want to make sure that everything that is done within the platform is efficient and it is well done through your policies. So we offer you a way to set a clock. Do you want to identify some of these accounts that are going old, or you want to look at specific accounts that you want to engage with because they're not engaging? You can set that clock within our platform to amplify the way to communicate with patients. For those accounts that get to that stage, you can now customize notices that can be loaded into the platform and delivered via email, or if you have a certified mail option, we can go ahead and send it via certified mail and reach out to those patients and educate them that we want to engage with them. We want to know what they need in order for their support, to know what their options are for continued storage or for their end of storage. And to make it more efficient, we give you the ability to set that clock and identify these automatically within the system. Now to get into what does next level look like and how are we addressing some of our compliance and our needs. We know that as we're globalizing embryo options, that we need to help facilitate compliance of statutory notices for cryo consent regulations. If in your market, your government or your own policies require you to notify patients ahead of an end of contract, or if there's any requirements that you need to make, we can automate and streamline those notices to reduce the work that you experience, but also ensure that you're compliant. All of it can be done with a full overview of reporting and visibility, so you can provide it to inspectors to make sure that they know that you're following your own or given regulations. And you can customize this to meet your country specifics and the requirements. And we're really proud of what we've done specifically for the UK market and for what we've done for the HFEA. And I'm going to touch on that now to show you what compliance can look like within an automation. So we know that the HFEA has now expanded their storage up to 55 years. So they've moved from a 10-year up to a 55-year storage allowance, but they are doing it with a 10-year renewal. So every 10 years, we need to go ahead and renew. And part of that renewal requires specific notices and statutory notices, your RNE, RNG, NDE, NDG, and the NWC. All of these notices need to go out and be shown that you've been providing them to the patients. And they need to be done at specific time intervals, and your patients need to be able to engage with you to let you know what they want to be done given the HFEA regulations. So when you look inside of the portal, you can see that within our portal, we can show you their HFEA regulations within the freeze display. So you can see that the date is displayed for their freeze date. You can see the storage consent period, and you can see exactly what the storage consent status is from it. So that means that every account that's loaded in order to be compliant, we then have a separate HFEA or compliance tab that meets the regulations and the standard notices that you've customized that need to go out or that are given to you by, let's say, the HFEA to go out. You can go ahead and expand that individual account, and you can look at the individual account's renewal period. You can see when the forms are going out. We have easy send by a click of a button, that if a specific form needs to be resent, you can push a button and send it directly to the patient instantly. We can do that on your behalf if they call into us to be able to send to the patient as well. We can go ahead and send it to them. You can see where they're at in their renewal period, which forms that they've been given. Are they within the mandatory hold time frame? And when are they eligible for disposal as dictated by the HFEA? All of this is done within full reporting and full visuals that you can come in as an admin member of this and specifically see all of the reports that you need in order to show inspectors, as well as to show yourself to see who's received their RNE, who's received their NWC, who has done what, where, and how. And then on top of that, all of the activity that is done, every communication that is made, every email that is sent, every time a patient communicates within is logged within the activity, so that if you are faced with a patient that is not communicating with you, you can go into that activity and pull and see everything at your fingertips. So what we're trying to say is that to be compliant is to use your digital footprint, what you have at your fingertips, and amplify that utilizing automation to meet your patients, because that's what they expect. The literature tells us what the patients are looking for and what we need to do. And we encourage you to come and talk to us at ESHRA to talk to you about how this can work within your clinic and within your market. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Great presentation, really insightful. I think that embryo options and also tomorrow are really revolutionizing and leading the way with cryo management, which historically has been my biggest headache as a lab director. But what I really want to talk about is sort of compliance and the flow of data. If some clinics that are not familiar with how embryo options work, could you maybe just explain about how information shared from their EMRs to the embryo options team? How much do embryo options see, particularly for those older patients that maybe haven't consented to that kind of data being shared?
Yep. So the way that embryo options works is that we have an integration with many EMRs. So you would have to ask us if we have the integration with your EMR, or if we need to go ahead and initiate an integration, or if you're on an Excel spreadsheet or any of the spreadsheets, let's talk to us about what that looks like as well. So lots of options, but mainly what we're looking at are patient demographics, who the patient is, and how to link them to a freeze date. That's all the information that we get. We're not getting full detail. We're not getting outcomes. We're getting a limited subset to say this patient does have these, this type of material, embryos, eggs, sperm, tissue stored. So we see that comes in, and then their freeze dates. Once it's inside of our platform, we then work with you on a go live. So we say, these are all of the accounts that are coming in. How would you like to set them up? What type of communication do you want to give to them? Let's show you what the patient sees. Let's show you all the communication that they have. And it's your clinic. It's not us. It looks like you. So it goes out to the patients and it goes out to you, showing it's your portal. So then you get to direct how it kind of stands up and operates given by the account. So typically we call that a payment plan. And so we put them on a specific plan that then outlines what type of notification that they get. Second to that, we then can launch you in our compliance and any of the features that we have for compliance that says, okay, on this payment plan or for these group of patients, this is what we want for their compliance. We want them to receive these standard notifications at this timing and at this interval, or it meets the HFEA regulations like this. We can then stand that up. And so they can kind of work side by side. One can be functioning for billing and engagement, and one can be functioning for compliance. But it does start with that kind of onboarding load where we pull from the EMR or from you directly the patient demographics and then their cryo inventory.
Great. I'm sure there'll be lots more questions in the Q&A at the end. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who's Dr. Christine Allen, who's the Co-Chief Scientific Officer at Reproductive Laboratory Services, along with Dr. Brett Reggio. She's also the Chief Operating Officer of Elite IVF and a partner at Fertility Consultancy in Denmark. She's a certified embryologist and andrologist who has traveled the world developing and teaching lab automation technologies, building IVF clinics and implementing new technologies as state-of-the-art egg banking, non-invasive PGT-A, and data analytics for success improvement. Christine's research in cryopreservation, vitrification, and fertilization has been published in several leading industry journals, and she's got a proven track record of the direct implementation of embryology lab management, quality control, andrology testing, outside consulting, and is an expert in US and ASRM laboratory standards. And this talk is kindly sponsored by Reproductive Laboratory Services. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And thank you everyone for being here, last talk of the day. And I'm not gonna waste anyone's time with any sales or with saying the obvious. We're just here to wrap the night talking about how you can get all this beautiful set of tools that comes with automation and beginning of AI being developed in our field. And you can use it to absolutely sink your laboratory and destroy your business, because we're seeing that way too much out there. And we're going to learn why, and we're going to learn how do we prevent this from happening, and how do we implement things and validate things successfully. So is your laboratory the Babel Tower ready to fall? I don't know if everybody knows the legend of from the Genesis, from the Tower of Babel, where the Babylonians wanted to build a tower that goes all up to the gods in the sky. And they wanted to be a mark of the development in their times. And I think this is what a lot of us are trying to do. We're trying to build big networks, big automated laboratories, big things that work more streamlined as a factory. And we want better outreach. We want escalate our businesses as fast as possible for more profit and more reliability and for more safety. And when we look around and we go talk to our colleagues, it's just not working. As a consultant, we go to about, depending on the year, 50, 100 different clinics for various reasons. And the complaint is in every single one of them. We're trying to automate and it's being a nightmare. And why is that happening? Well, we have several elements for automation in here in the laboratory that we have to consider, that have to flow between one each other very well, just like the Babel Tower. People communicating with one each other to, that it was what the story said, for things to go well. And once things do not communicate well, we start seeing problems in our implementation of automation and in the way that the laboratory is being ran. Elements that are key in our laboratory that need to integrate and converse with one each other for us to have success in our automation. EMR is a central piece of it. Cycle management tools. AI, which is, again, a development right now. I don't think anyone has secure AI tools that are clinically validated enough, but we're getting really close to that. Sample ID, the automatic sample ID tools that are in the market that are so important right now, and environmentals in the laboratory. That is basically our quality control. What are we looking into laboratory that is reliable measurements and consistent, and they're actually meaningful for safety or for quality of the work that we do. For us to have all these things going on, one very important thing that every laboratory director or manager or supervisor should be doing today if we're trying to implement any new technology or automation in a laboratory, is to check for data entry workload from our employees, from our staff, from our embryologists, whoever is doing that. And we have to know that the weakest link in all this process is always the human that is working behind the keyboard. The quality of work that our staff is going to put in that keyboard is highly related with the time that they consume doing that. And the number of entries that they have to do per day is always going to have an impact on the time they're using for implementation and data collection for each technology that we use, right? Here is where the malleability of communication between the systems in the lab is going to have a great impact on if we're going to have a successful lab that uses automation or one that is driving the embryologists and the data management people completely crazy and nothing is making sense. When you're looking here, in this graph particularly, I like to use to show how happy your embryologist is inside the lab when they have more data entry to do because your systems and your softwares are just not communicating between each other, and they have to go there and physically enter the data in each one of them separately. And you see in there, Sal working a lot on Tuesday, probably a pretty happy guy. On Friday, he's not doing much data, it's probably leaving. But when you look at Broccoli, and yes, I did change the names of the people that work in the lab. You see that person on a Friday doing that much data entry together with Tom Hanks that is doing quite a bit too. Are these embryologists really happy working in there on a Friday? Probably seems like the end of the day, they're sitting there typing information in again and again and again, the same information in different softwares because the lab is going through the process of automation. Probably not. Probably in here, your process of automation validation or implementation is making your embryologists go away. And this causes more chaos inside the laboratory instead of helping. Okay, we all are going through this process. We are having to collect too much data. We don't know how to analyze it, and it's taking more time out of embryologists than if they don't have any automation, if they have only the spreadsheet that was out there 5 years ago, which they probably still use because they can't fully trust all the communication between the systems because it glitches all the time. And I know the majority of you guys are listening to this and thinking, yeah, that's what works. That's how it's working in my lab. And my lab director just says that it's because we don't know how to use it. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Successful operations of laboratories and IVF clinics as a whole today is counting on clinical and IVF laboratories. If you're going to need to use automation and you're actually interested on making automation make everybody's life easier, you do have to include the IT department on your math. And that's so important because we don't have an IT background. We are embryologists in the lab. We have physicians and nurses in the clinical. We simply cannot troubleshoot things immediately just counting on vendors. We don't know how. So you need the IT department. So what are your options? You can hire an IT professional that knows about every one of those softwares that are used in the IVF field, which is none, pretty much nobody out there. You have to train someone in-house to learn all that. Or you can have your laboratory director or a consultant laboratory director implementing all that for you. And the key question when you're going to have a laboratory director or a consultant laboratory director implementing any data-related technologies in your laboratory is, what is your IT background? If that person doesn't have a strong IT background, understanding what is the data, what is the metadata, what is the concept, what are the requirements for that or each specific technology that you're putting in there, that person is going to put your lab down. Run. That's what I always say. For the laboratory directors that want to take up on the challenge, what are you going to see out there? The most simple examples we have for data issues when you're implementing something. The data isn't where it needs to be. So let's think about our EMR. You're looking for it and there are 500 different tabs in there. You just can't find what you need in a timely manner because it's just too complicated. Or your data is being transferred from one software to another one, scrambled. Or your data is there, but it's too late because it was all scrambled between one vendor and the other. They took way too long to get the information to help you, and suddenly it's affecting patients. For example, you need to implement a cryopreservation storage software in there, and you need your data extracted from your EMR. And then you call your EMR, and they say, yes, we can absolutely merge with them because every vendor is going to tell you that they're fully compatible with whatever you have in the lab. And they say, yes, we can do this extracting here, May 2027. Because they were busy. Look, and it's happening. And I'm not kidding. This is happening out there. Or your data is not formatted correctly. So one vendor sends the information in one format to the other and nothing works. And suddenly your patient information is all over the place and you can't fix it. You have poor quality data. That happens a lot with AI, a lot with AI development. I slightly disagree that AI is just a tool to help us. I fully believe it should overperform us. We're not that special. We're humans, and the human brain comes with a lot of faults. And when you're talking about selection and numbers, AI has to outperform every single one of us because it makes sense. And I do think this is where we're going, and this is how it's going to be. We just have to learn how to use it specifically to outperform us so we can go back and be an embryologist and not be a data analyst or whatever we're doing to choose embryos that is taking way too much time from the precious times of the day that we have to concentrate and do a task inside the IVF lab. Duplicates throughout the pipeline. Who in here doesn't have to type the same information at least twice in 2 different softwares or data sheets or whatever you have inside your laboratory? Today, in 2024, this is absolutely unacceptable. We're still punching keys in the computer to put SARTA-DAD inside their database, which should be just exported in a simple way. Or there's no clear common understanding of your data. That's when you're failing. You're trying to put all that technology in there and nothing in the lab is making sense. And that's when you have to stop and rearrange things and look for an IT person because you're just not up to the challenge. Here, interactions that can bring issues during implementation of technology in your lab that can cause you problems. The premise of everything you're going to do with data management and technology implementation is going to be good data in will get good data out, but bad data in, it's going to give you garbage. Data starts with your patient intake by the front desk, and it passes through the EMR. And here you can see the EMR that you choose for your IVF clinic is going to be in the middle, in the center of everything else, every other software that you're going to use in the IVF lab and in the clinic. And you see in there inventory, electronic witnessing, AI tools that are coming up, environmental controls, there's your QC and everything that is happening around the environment of your embryos. They're all connected, but starting with patient intake and highly depending on your EMR. So be careful what you choose. Issues we can have with that, again, repeated data entry or data entry errors. One misspelling of a last name is going to cause you a lot of trouble out there along the pipe. And data entry errors are just human beings. You can hear from your manager that you're not attentive to details. You can hear that you're unreliable. Again, farther from the truth. We're humans and our brains are set to make little mistakes. It's how it happens. And we should just avoid that from happening, from having better protocols and better choices. Data cleansing, how much time you have to spend cleaning your data because you put too much garbage in your softwares all the way down to AI are just not showing benefit because your data is all dirty to start with. You can have interface errors between those arrows in there. Those are your interfaces. You can have active interface errors or latent, depending on how that connection is being made between one and another software. Or the software doesn't really perform as advertised. Again, every one of them is going to tell you that they can connect and they are compatible with whatever you have in your laboratory. Turns out that the vast majority of them are not. Who didn't go with a software that you're ready to install and you're ready to start using, and then the vendor comes and said, oh no, it's not working because your browser is version number 37.38. We need 37.39. Didn't you know that? It's your fault. Or, oh no, your API is open, but it has a security tool in there that it doesn't let us migrate. And the list of not performing as advertised, it can go on forever. You just need to check with somebody that has a background on IT what you're bringing in. Again, data integrity is key. Same is data security. If you have a software from a vendor that is fully open and everybody can log in at any time, I very much doubt that that's going to be secure. And then you have something that is very integratable and very malleable, but highly unsecure for your patient data. And if you don't have the IT person to look into that, you're exposing every single patient to a hacking that is that easy. So be careful with that too. And then the complete inability to have all this working together and make a successful integration. Now, you don't have a lab director that wants to take up on the challenge because there's no IT background, and you don't want to hire an IT specialist or a department. That's when you're going to have to be very careful who you're working with. Do we have solutions for this? You're still up for the challenge? Yes, look at the API interfaces. Does it work with a variety of vendors, or it does not work? You have to check every one of the APIs. Do we have a middleware in-house? Are you interested in developing one? Or you're using a data integration tool? Are you using the right data integration tool? Do you have your data lake or a warehousing? And I put a couple cheat sheets in there. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just make sure you understand this is not going to solve your problem. This is just a quick cheat sheet just for you to have an idea of what's going on here. If you're listening to this and thinking, what did she just say? I have no idea. forget about implementation by yourself. Hire an IT department or look for someone that can help you with strong IT viewing here. Just don't go by yourself. Don't go by what vendors tell you. It's not going to go well in the majority of the projects that you see out there. We don't have industry standards for any of this. And this makes us hostages of whatever each vendor is telling us, because we just don't have to understand what we're doing. And again, security will become an issue as we need open APIs for interfaces. So be very careful where you're putting your patient information into. Ask the questions. Get the IT guy. There are plenty of dorks in there wanting a job in an IVF clinic, learning those things. Give them an opportunity. Now in here, I got to the very difficult choice of telling you all the red flags, which business to never work with, or to tell you good luck on your own, because I'm not going to give you any tips, or to tell you my own experience and give you examples of businesses that I have a lot of luck with and work really well. For me, I'm not endorsing that you're never going to have a problem with the businesses that I have luck working with, but I have had very good surprises, very positive surprises working with the level of knowledge that these companies offer on my projects. And we do dozens a year. So I have never seen a company that can integrate environmentals as Ziltrix North America does. Their level of IT engineers is that high to start the project with, and it's been really good for me to work with. When I work with AI development, and again, not clinical, everything is under development in here, I had very good experiences, and I have been very impressed with the level of knowledge and commitment that I see with MIM fertility, which is not much in the market, but it should be. I think all of us are gonna have the opportunity to work with great things coming from this international company. But again, this is me working with different vendors and being very positively impressed by them. And for medical records, I do work with Artisan, because you get on the phone with them, it's not going to be to 2027. They're going to have your problem fixed in 2 minutes. And for us, for medical records, there's nothing more important in your IVF lab or in your clinic in general. So these are examples of things that work very well for me. I'm not saying that other vendors won't work well for you, but I think there is a lot of room for problems implementing in our labs and making things communicate, and I can make this communicate. So for a variety of reasons, then I already put you guys, maybe half of you, to sleep talking about IT, and I won't go into details, but these are my suggestions. Now, all that was for our lab directors and supervisors, viewers today. For participants, there are physicians. If you don't want to deal with any of that, and you don't even want to have your laboratory, there's always the option to go do your cases in a laboratory that is open to different physicians. We do it. That's how we work. Our VIP clients are the physicians and nobody else. They bring the cycles for us, but there are plenty of labs around the world. In US, in Europe, in South America, there are open laboratories. They are independent. So you don't want to deal with any of that. Just go to an independent laboratory and have your problem dealt by them or by us or whoever you want. This is what I have for you guys. Thank you very much for being here watching. Thank you for your patience, because it's late already. And if you have any questions, please reach out at any time. I'll be very happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. I really never thought I would be glued to the screen listening to data, but I was really rapt with attention. So thank you so much for that. Just to start off with a quick question from Bronte Stone from USA, a familiar name.
Yeah, wow.
Yes. So they ask, with the rapid change that we do see with a lot of AI and platforms, Windows 10 apparently is also no longer supported by Microsoft. So how do we go about selecting the best data management platform? Is there a path or a manual that we can look forward to where we see red flags and choose something that would be most appropriate for our lab?
I love Bronte. I do. Yeah, it's one of the oldies that I always look up to, and I couldn't expect anything less from him. Bronte, we don't have it. As I was preparing this talk, I was showing this to a few people, and the feedback that I got was, you're building this into the sale of a company that does IT management for IVF lab. I'm not, and we don't have this. And suddenly we're growing into all this, which looks to investors as a great opportunity to make fast money. But we have a lot of garbage out there, and we don't have anyone to guide us through. And it's not like all the vendors are garbage. That's not it. It's just that you have to pair them up in a way that makes sense. And the analogy that I'm making here is, when you talk to a vendor, it's like I was just talking to my kids about this actually, like you're swiping on your Match.com, and somebody that just matches with everyone is just the perfect
I love
life
that.
partner for every type of personality and tastes. Run. And again, you have a lab director that is usually a consultant that is really on top of IT and has a background and understands the metadata and development that goes through this, or you're open to exposure to errors.
Right.
And that's what I say. Hire someone in your team that knows these things, that actually studied every one of the vendors you're working with, and hire that person. It's going to take a while to get that person prepared. If not, you need to work with a consultant that has at least access to an IT person that can come and do the homework before you hire anyone. And any lab director that tells you, you don't have to know this. I can go there and implement. I can make a lab fully automated for you. You don't really need IT background. Again, run.
Well, on that very cheerful note, thank you so much, Christine. Let's jump straight into the Q&A. So maybe we can get some general questions from our audience started. Maybe some of my co-moderators can come up with a question.
I'm so blown away by Christine's talk. She's had some absolutely brilliant one-liners.
Definitely.
You're not that special. I will definitely be stealing. Definitely using that one again. Her whole talk resonates with what I've been doing for like the last 10 months. You know, we're building or have built that kind of lab. We employ data scientists, and those are the people you want to employ. They can do things like, you might just be thinking out loud and saying, oh, it would be great if our EMR could do this. And then 2 days later, they've done it and it's fully functioning. So a lot of resonance hitting me. So I'm just going to skip to some questions. How can the different computer languages be merged together so that it's all clear? I'm not sure who answered that question. The name's not in the thing. Anyone want to take that one?
If nobody does, I will, but please be my guest, everybody.
Yeah, we'll hand it to you, Christine.
Yeah.
I don't. I am not a data scientist or developer. I do have 2 kids that are. So I just abuse them. And I ask questions that I don't understand the answer, and I make them solve the problems for me. So we will not be able to do this. And again, we're not that smart and that brilliant to be excellent embryologists and talented physicians and thoughtful managers and computer science and electronic engineering experts. We can't. So I wouldn't even try to start solving that problem alone. I would go to who knows how to do this. And it would take a while, because when you look at 2 different systems, your system and the next one you want, it's not an immediate answer, ever. It always takes some time for them to study, do their homework, and figure things out, and work in a project. And you would be surprised with the level of commitment and patience that these people have. They try and it doesn't work, then they code again and it doesn't work, then they code again, it doesn't work. And then the whole night passes through and it still didn't work until it works. So please, guys, leave it for people that know what they're doing.
That was really well put. I have a question, I believe, for Dr. Badiola. The question comes from Moses Cesario, from the Bay Area. His question is, why is augmented intelligence better than AI? Is there a profile or profiles that AI misses? And if so, why?
Augmented intelligence is a term combining artificial intelligence with human decisions, to put it in a way. So this is Kasparov, this very famous chess player, has an unofficial law, the Kasparov law, suggesting that a powerful computer will always be outperformed by a mediocre human plus a mediocre computer with a good process. So answering, so just following on Christine's suggestion that AI should outperform us, I completely agree. And there is enough evidence right now suggesting that AIs are outperforming us. In the same way that every time that I get into theater to operate a complicated case, I always have a better surgeon than I am as my first assistant. What did I just do? I improved my team. I improved the chances of my patient having a good prognosis should we run into complications, but I'm still the surgeon. So if the AI is better than I am, fantastic. We have a great tool that if we learn how to use, we can augment our capabilities. So that's the concept of augmented intelligence. It's not a new form of AI, it's just this combination of a human, a computer, and a good process on how to use this tool.
Thank you very much. That was great. So I have another question, running through a lot of questions now, I believe for John. We have a question here. With more people paying for storage with your system and hence giving more revenue to the clinic, can you see that off-site storage will be a norm in the future?
I do. I do see that we're going to look at that, but there is a stabilization event that happens. So when you run the models, your amount of standard attrition for use or for other reasons stabilizes yourself. So it's just whether or not you have the capacity to get to where you stabilize to it. But I also think that there's going to be a desire to utilize offsite storage quite a bit from it. But yeah, and inherently, I think everybody asks themselves, how many more tanks can I fit? How many more am I purchasing? What do I do? And eventually they're going to mostly be looking for an offsite storage facility. Yep.
Great, thanks.
John, let's piggyback that question because I'm going to take it a little bit further. Helen asked a great question too, Krugovic. If we can look into the future, right? So is that where we're all headed, right? Are we headed towards one, offsite storage? Number two, if we use sort of all these advancements in big data, AI algorithms, and deep technologies, how are those going to transform it? If we think about tissue transport and offsite storage and sort of inventory management. So look ahead 5 to 10 years.
I can tell you that from my personal experience, it's never worked the way that any of the data was indicating it needed to look like. So meaning, oh, if a patient stores for X amount of years, they're going to use it in X amount of time. That needs to be some much larger data sets than what we originally had looked at. This was in previous experience. Do I think that AI would come in? Maybe. I think that that's where we need to talk about our data health and what we're using for all of our softwares and what are we allowing. And like you said, once you know, do you want to know? I think that's where we were going with it. I think that that's the question at hand. I'm more tactical. What do we need today to meet what our patients are needing? Can we maintain a level of care that we want to maintain, meaning that we're not doubling up space in a location that we can't fit the space for it. So more of an immediate need tactically, do we need to identify offsite storage? Because even what the data most likely will show us is that patients are going to want to keep and maintain storage possibly for longer, and there's going to be more patients utilizing storage. So we're going to be faced with that without the need of AI to tell us that it's going to go there, in my opinion. But eventually we will be using that to help us with predictions, I would think.
So moving on, there's a question from Chavi, who's the lab director at ARIA in London. He's got a question about how AI actually works and how can AI improve outcomes when most of the algorithms operate as a black box, leaving us unaware of the variables analyzed and their biological significance. Understanding these variables would allow us to refine our culture media systems and other factors to enhance performance rather than merely selecting the best embryo from the batch.
Hi, Harry. So, love this question. I think that Harry has a very good point in the sense that AI should help us not only to make fast selections, but should work as well as a tool to improve the way in which we're working. So I'll put it in a different way. Right now, if we have 10 eggs from patient A, these 10 eggs are going to be subject to X conditions. I am going to be the embryologist performing the ICSI. But for the next case, it's going to be you, Andrew. I've never done an ICSI, okay? So when we send this information to the computer is going to have so many variables that it's going to be very difficult to make sense of this. Now, once that we start automating, once that we start removing all these variables and all the conditions, the operator disappear from the equation, then we'll be able to integrate features from the eggs, features from the sperm that was injected to create this embryo. And then we'll have an idea on how much of the weight of this good or poor quality embryo is coming from the poor quality egg, from the poor quality sperm, or how much was because the environment was suboptimal, not for that clinic, but for that specific case. So we can then backtrack and start identifying a profile of embryos that could benefit from extra protein, extra sugar, less oxygen. So AI, if we can use it as a tool to learn and improve the way in which we're working, that would be fantastic. But first, we need to remove the variables in the lab. We first need to automate.
Alejandro, what happens when we start to have a discrepancy then? What happens if the AI tool tells us it's the highest score, but the subjective morphology looks the poorest.
Augmented intelligence, again, is a tool, and we always have to keep in mind who is the agent and who is responsible for these decisions.
Mhm.
So if I don't agree with this second opinion, again, I am the surgeon. I am the one that is making decisions. So if I disagree with that opinion, it's my call. The one thing that has happened is that we learn from AIs. So the first version that we developed for Erica, once that we completed this Erica study, and we started talking to embryologists, we came to realize that embryologists didn't trust the AI when the segmentation was not good enough to their eyes. So we actually realized that they were right. The AI tended to make more mistakes or be less reliable when the segmentation was not good. So we changed the model. So there was an interaction. So whomever is responsible is the one that needs to make the final call.
How would you put that into practice? You know, you got different commercially available software. So you've got, I don't know, Future Fertility and Chloe OQ to grade eggs. You've got SID to grade sperm. So say you get a grade 10 egg and a score 800 sperm. 800 is the best. Never remember which way around. I can't remember if it was 0 or 800. So you put the best two together and then you get a one embryo. How do you validate which AI is best for you?
Talking about consequences of AI, we need to learn to work together. We need to integrate. So right now, to the best of my knowledge, we are the only ones that have an AI to assess sperm in real time. We have also an AI that evaluates eggs, and we also have Future Fertility, who has a couple AIs. And we have, I lost count on how many companies offering AI for embryo selection. Now, there's a concept that we have developed called SOPHI, which stands for Sperm Oocyte Feature Integration. So this one is agnostic. If you're using our AI, if you're using Future Fertility for egg assessment, there should be a time when we can integrate the features from the egg assessment with the features from the sperm, and this information to be integrated into the AI to select the the embryo. So in this way, you can have a balance. And this embryo selection AI should be more interpretable, more accurate. And in this way, again, you can start assessing the way that the egg, the sperm, or the environment could have had in the development of that embryo. So we need to start opening doors to our competitors and start integrating the AIs. I think that right now, this is the one challenge, integrating AIs.
Alejandro, I do not work for or under any particular AI development companies, but what I see out there is that it's that easy to create pre-AIs, because we're not fully AI yet, but pre-AI tools that are learning from biased data, because we are biased as humans. So what I see out there is the creation of biased data to feed into a ruling or an algorithm that is going to turn into an AI. But answering Amber's question, this has to be validated in each site. We should not be having one AI that covers in every single laboratory. As you said, quality control is the key in each laboratory you're going to use the AI. And when you put all that together, I do like that you guys have the prospective studies. I think you do an amazing job as a company, but that's not the reality for everyone. There are other vendors there that do that too. But I think, again, going back to having the IT discussions, how was this data selected to get in? Again,
Very
it's
good
biased.
observations.
You can bias that so you have a better result, but at the end of the day, it's not going to make your outcomes better. When you have AI targeting only up to euploid embryos, which I fully understand from a compliance point of view in US. If you go any farther than that, the FDA is going to have requirements, and people don't want to face all those requirements right away because it's a big investment for a company. But if you want babies at home, you're going to have to start looking at FDA regulated parameters, and you're going to have to start looking at quality of data you're getting in, and look into, does this specific AI work in my setting or not? Because you can change the ruling and you can make it work, but you need the validation process.
A very good point, and I'll be very quick. The way in which we train the data is, the AIs is important. If we use supervised or unsupervised, there is a difference in the amount of bias that you can introduce. And that's why some companies, including us, prefer unsupervised training. Now, the quality of the data that you receive is going to dictate in some way the quality of the AI, the performance of the AI. So we're very, very peculiar when we're curating the data coming from other centers, because you can have data poisoning, and that could pretty much destroy your model. Now, training for every single clinic in every single scenario, that would be a very poor AI. This means that the quality of the AI that you developed has such a small number of examples that is not trained well enough to generalize. This is, you can make a diagnosis of, let's say, diabetes in Mexico, because the profile of diabetic patients in Mexico is, you show me a picture and I can give you an 80% accuracy with whether that patient has diabetes or not. But then you bring me to the UK and the patient is not the same, physically speaking. Did I learn medicine right? No. I must be able to generalize. This is the computer, the AI should have enough examples from different scenarios to be able to generalize. However, there is a concept of fine-tuning. Fine-tuning is different than retraining. Ridiculous example. I don't know anyone in the world doing this. Okay, imagine that there is a clinic that has a protocol performing assisted hatching on 100% of their embryos on day 1. Of course, all embryos are going to be hatched at the end of probably day 3, right? So how is the AI going to make an interpretation of that unless you fine-tune? You have a very robust model that understands the different stages of embryos, can understand when an embryo is fully hatched, partially hatched, and it's just a peculiarity. You fine-tune to make the AI understand that for that scenario, 100% of the embryos are hatched, and that is not relevant for the decision-making process. So fine-tune is important.
I completely agree with you, and that's what I meant with doing the little tweaks. But I do believe that AI has a challenge, that is the wide variability and lack of standards that we have in laboratories. And this is not a fault of the AI development. It's our fault to have a lack of standardization in our laboratories.
We need to automate.
It takes time.
Sorry.
No, I agree with you, and I'm here to support it, but I think it has to be done the right way, and validations have to be done in every single one of the laboratories that start automating, because we need that fine tuning. We need that. It's going to be part of everyone's jobs.
I think it's time to start wrapping up. I would say, just adding into that end of that conversation, I have been asked to write a best practice guideline on how to validate AI into the lab. So if any of you would like to help me, feel free to get in contact. So we'd just like to thank everyone who took part in the webinar. My co-hosts, Dr. Amber Cooper and Radhika. I'm going to murder your second name.
Don't even bother.
And Alejandro Chavez Badiola, John Whitney, and Dr. Christine Allen. Been a pleasure, guys.
Thanks, Andrew. I'd also like to take this moment to thank our sponsors for today, IVF 2.0 Limited, Cooper Surgical and Reproductive Laboratory Services, and last by definitely no means least, the team from I3, the organizing committee of this initiative, including Jacques Cohen, Peter Nagy, Marianne Svetes, I hope I didn't do the same. Thomas Elliott, Fran Farley, Violetta Sauer, and of course, Giles Palmer.
And we really hope you will join us soon for the next I3 session, which will be on July 23rd, and it's titled The Gray Zone. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Happy Easter to everyone if you're going. Bye.
See you in Amsterdam, guys.
Okay.